Have you ever wondered how Moses, one of the most revered figures in history, came into the world? In an era of turbulence and oppression, a child was born. His name was Moses, a beacon of hope for the Hebrew people. Born to Amram and Jochebed of the tribe of Levi, Moses entered a world where Pharaoh, the ruler of Egypt, had ordered the death of all newborn Hebrew boys. But Jochebed, a mother's love knowing no bounds, hatched a plan to save her son. She placed baby Moses in a waterproof basket and set it adrift on the Nile River. This river, often a symbol of danger and uncertainty, became a path to salvation for Moses. Pharaoh's daughter, bathing at the riverbank, discovered the basket. Touched by the infant's cries, she chose to raise him as her own. And so Moses, the future liberator of the Israelites, was saved and raised in the palace of the very Pharaoh who sought to kill him. But how did Moses, raised in the lap of luxury, come to identify with his Hebrew roots? Now that's a tale of awakening and escape. As Moses grew, he was no stranger to the privileges of the royal court, but deep within, his true identity stirred. The Hebrew blood coursing through his veins could not be silenced by the trappings of Egyptian royalty. There came a day when Moses could no longer ignore the cries of his people. He chanced upon an Egyptian taskmaster, ruthless and cruel, lashing out at a Hebrew slave. His blood boiled at the sight. In a fit of rage, Moses struck the Egyptian, who fell, never to rise again. Moses the prince was now Moses the killer. The hushed whispers of his deed soon echoed through the palace corridors. Fearful of the Pharaoh's wrath, Moses made the choice to flee. He traded the golden sands of Egypt for the harsh wilderness of Midian. It was here in this desolate land that Moses found refuge. Midian, a land far removed from the grandeur of the Pharaoh's court, was a place of shepherds and simple folk. It was in this land that Moses, the fugitive, found a new identity, Moses the shepherd. He married Zipporah, the daughter of Jethro, the priest of Midian, and settled into his new life far from the turmoil of Egypt. His past was a closed chapter, or so he thought. But destiny had other plans. His royal upbringing, his Hebrew heritage, and his life as a shepherd in Midian, all were but a prelude to the grand narrative that was to unfold. Thus Moses, once a prince of Egypt, became a fugitive and shepherd in a foreign land. His journey was far from over. The echoes of his past, the cries of his people, and the call of destiny were all leading him towards a future he could scarcely have imagined. The stage was set for the next chapter in the life of Moses, the deliverer of the Israelites. So how did a fugitive shepherd become the chosen liberator of the Israelites, you may ask? Well, the answer lies in a rather extraordinary encounter in the wilderness. As Moses was tending his father-in-law's flock, he came across a bush that was on fire. The peculiar thing about this bush was that it was not consumed by the flames. As he approached this burning yet unscathed bush, he heard a voice. It was a voice like no other, a voice that echoed with authority and stirred the depths of his soul. It was the voice of God. God spoke to Moses from within the burning bush. He revealed himself as the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He spoke of the suffering of his people in Egypt, their cries for help, and his plans for their deliverance. God, in his infinite wisdom, chose Moses to be the instrument of this deliverance. He commanded Moses to go to Pharaoh and demand the release of his people. God's plan was to lead the Israelites out of their slavery in Egypt and into a land flowing with milk and honey. Moses, startled and overwhelmed, expressed his doubts. He questioned his ability to carry out such a monumental task. He was, after all, a shepherd, a man of humble background, and not a mighty warrior or eloquent speaker. But God answered his doubts with a promise. He assured Moses that he would be with him every step of the way. He would give him the words to say and the strength to overcome any opposition. God also gave Moses a sign to show the Israelites and Pharaoh that he was indeed sent by God. He transformed Moses' staff into a serpent and then back into a staff again. This was to be a demonstration of God's power and a confirmation of Moses' divine mission. Despite his initial hesitation, Moses accepted his divine mission, setting the stage for one of history's greatest exoduses. His obedience and faith would prove instrumental in the liberation of a people and the establishment of a nation. How did Moses, with God's help, persuade the Pharaoh to release the Israelites, you may wonder? Well, the answer lies in the 10 plagues that were sent upon Egypt. These were not random afflictions, but strategically designed signs from the divine to convince Pharaoh of God's power and majesty. The first plague turned the Nile River, Egypt's life source, into blood. The second brought forth an infestation of frogs, followed by the third plague, which was a swarm of lice or gnats. The fourth plague saw wild animals or flies covering the country. The fifth plague killed off the Egyptian livestock, and the sixth brought boils upon the people. The seventh plague was the most terrifying yet, with a storm of hail and fire raining down. The eighth plague was a swarm of locusts that devoured everything left after the hail. The ninth plunged Egypt into total darkness. But it was the 10th and final plague that tipped the scales. The death of the firstborn of every Egyptian family, from the pharaoh's palace to the humblest abode, left a profound impact. This last devastating plague led to the Exodus, the mass departure of the Israelites from Egypt. Moses, guided by God, led his people away from their lives of bondage, but their journey was not without obstacles. The Pharaoh, having changed his mind about freeing the Israelites, sent his army in hot pursuit. Then came another divine intervention. At the Red Sea, Moses raised his staff and the waters parted, creating a dry path for the Israelites to cross. As they reached the other side and the Egyptian army entered the seabed, the waters closed in, swallowing the pursuers. Through divine intervention and Moses' leadership, the Israelites were finally free from bondage. This monumental event marked the beginning of a new chapter in their history, a journey towards a land promised by God. The Exodus, a tale of faith, courage, and liberation, remains one of the most compelling stories in the Bible. But what happened after the Israelites escaped Egypt? How did they survive in the wilderness? Well, as the Israelites journeyed through the barren wilderness, sustenance came in miraculous ways. Manna, a heavenly food, appeared 6 mornings a week, and water flowed from a rock at Moses' command. But the real game changer was yet to come. In the 3rd month after their escape, they camped at the foot of Mount Sinai. It was here that Moses received the 10 Commandments, a divine set of laws directly from God. These commandments formed the foundation of what is now known as the Mosaic Law, a rule book that would guide the Israelites in their daily life and worship. This significant event marked a new covenant between God and his people. However, the giving of the law wasn't a smooth process. As Moses was on the mountain receiving the commandments, the people, in their impatience, made a golden calf to worship. This act of idolatry brought severe consequences upon them, but Moses, rather than abandoning them, interceded for them. He reminded God of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and asked him to turn away his fierce wrath. God relented, showing his mercy, and the journey towards the Promised Land continued. The journey was far from easy. The Israelites faced numerous trials and tribulations, ranging from bitter water at Marah, attack from the Amalekites, to rebellion in the camp. Yet Moses, with his relentless faith in God, remained undeterred, guiding the people through each hardship. For 40 years, Moses led the Israelites through the wilderness, teaching them God's laws and preparing them for their future home. He established a system of worship, a code of ethics, and a legal system which formed the basis of their society and culture. Despite numerous trials, Moses remained steadfast, guiding the Israelites towards their promised home. His leadership, resilience, and obedience to God remain as inspiring examples to this day. But what was the final fate of Moses, the liberator and lawgiver? Moses, having fulfilled his divine mission, met his end in the land of Moab. After decades of steadfast leadership and unwavering faith, Moses passed away, unable to enter the Promised Land due to an earlier act of disobedience. But death didn't diminish his legacy. Instead, it served as a poignant reminder of his humanity and his devotion to God's will. Yet, his death was not a common one. In a testament to his unique relationship with God, it is said that God himself buried Moses in a valley in Moab, with his final resting place remaining unknown to this day. Even in death, Moses remained a figure shrouded in divine mystery. Moses' impact on the Israelites was monumental. He led them out of bondage, delivered God's commandments, and laid the foundation of their law. His life and deeds became guiding lights, shaping the course of their history. Moses, having led the Israelites out of bondage and laid the foundation of their law, passed away, leaving behind a legacy that continues to inspire millions to this day.